You might know him best as Amp Fiddler.
Greetings, folks. Glad to be here at Red Bull. Such a lovely place. Thank you.
So why don't you give them like a brief introduction of like where you're at right now, like what you've been doing with records, the music you've been releasing.
I started some years ago creating music in a lot of different ways. Through electronic music, I've always bought drum machines, keyboards. I started playing piano as a kid, but electronics always were arose my curiosity. So through the years, I've continued to do that same thing, and I'm just going to move quickly through, where I started to where I am now, because we always made demos and created songs through drum machines. Like when I saw you guys working with that 909 yesterday, we bought whatever we could find, we got to try to create music. And just throughout the past 5 years, after years of touring, I decided to create some music myself and started sending music to a label in Europe, and the conversation came up about the possibility for creating dance music, and I thought, okay, I could do that. And since then, I consider myself an artist first, because being from Motown, I've always been impressed by the history and Motown singers, so I'm kind of like a Motown singer in a sense, but I also create. And it gave me the opportunity to do something that I wasn't doing before, which was electronic music in a sense of dance music. And as opposed to me doing like soul or hip hop, most of my friends, they really didn't like dance music because they see it as some kind of a gay house music entity for whatever reason, I mean, they're looking through some one-dimensional kind of sitting in a matrix in a sense, because they don't see the world, they just see the neighborhood and what they hear and what they know. So I had to kind of kick them out of my past thinking to get involved in new music in a way that I have now. And I'm still searching and I'm still looking, and I still look to learn and grow more and do more with electronic music and with what I do as a singer. So I've been collaborating with as many people as I can who makes different kind of electronic music. I'm always listening to whatever I can. Just that I'm not a young kid just starting doing this, so most people are stuck in what they do who I've grown up with. They want to hear some smooth jazz and some really cool music. Anything outside of that is kind of like, that's weird to me, man. I'm not trying to hear that. I'm going past that.
Let's talk a little bit about the traditional side. Like, what I mean by traditional side is like Parliament-Funkadelic. Now in Detroit, that's like indigenous music.
Yeah, when I first heard that, I was excited because I had been involved in DooWop, and I didn't like that before, because before that, I was listening to Janis Joplin and Hendrix and all kind of other, the Beatles, rock and roll, Motown. So Parliament-Funkadelic kind of stuck in the back of my mind. I had just started playing little keyboards, and I think that we have to keep our vision as far as who and where we want to be in our future. We have to stand in the now and see ourselves in the future as who we want to be in our lives. We have to say it to become it. And
yes.
that's how that happened for
Actualization.
me. And beyond that, you have to say, I am that, and it's going to happen, because whatever you say is what is. So at that time, I said that one day I would play in that band, and that's the way that came about. I started meeting people who were involved. I made a demo. I was always making demo tapes. I got a box of tapes this big with CDs in them from 4-track. I went from 4-track to 8-track, from 8-track to 16. I was always making demo tapes. So when George heard that demo tape, he called me to the studio and asked me if I wanted to get involved, start going to the studio, and started touring. So that's how that came about.
What era were you involved with Parliament?
That was 1984. And they were big. They had just come off of being huge. So they were taking a break, but they were doing more recording in the studio. So I was learning a lot about how to record and sound and tones and how they work together. And what amazed me even more of that was how vocalists work in the studio, because I couldn't imagine how people could remember all those notes and sing them together and keep doubling and tripling.
I mean, is not George Clinton the master of like these multi-part vocals?
Most definitely. And not only that, I think that something to learn from it was that he would constantly double, triple, and quadruple different parts when making a track. So the way he stacked vocals made the production really stronger. So I think when working with vocalists, you have to really have a great concept of making them sound good over your records. Sometimes I'm guilty of that in a bad sense, because when I played with the DJ upstairs, he said, yeah, I hear this track is nice, and I hear that, you know, your vocal and your music is kind of on the forefront of the kick, whereas on most house tracks, you would hear the kick right up front. So I'm not a DJ, so maybe I missed that in some ways. It's something for me to learn. And that's why I have a different respect for DJs in that sense, because a lot of musicians are either intimidated or they just don't like y'all. Because here you are playing their music, and they've been studying all this time, and they don't get a chance to have the kind of a dance medium that you have. But maybe they're missing that you also are the people who we need to interact, to create the kind of medium that we need to get our records played, and to know how to create the right tonalities to make people dance.
In general, it was considered a bad thing to be musical, let alone to bring in a bass guitar, a guitar, a piano, you know, any of these types of instruments. This is almost a sin. Right. Or to know like how chords are supposed to interrelate. But the knowledge of those things, it's like, look at how much richer that makes like a Galaxy to Galaxy record or something. You know, the way that the Mike Banks can interrelate chords and stuff. I think it adds to it. But coming from a medium where it's people that are borrowing from a very musical history, when you look at disco, when you look at like jazz and where funk meet, this is a very musical thing. Before it was a sin, and now it's all of a sudden it's like, yeah, oh, wait a minute. Electronic music has a history that starts before drum machines. You know, it's really easy to trace it back. You know, it's like, I don't know anybody who could like listen to like a record by Fela and not think that it see a direct connotation straight into house music. It's so the repetition, but it's I hate to use the word trance, but it's like this. It's this groove, this endless time groove. It's like you hear the same thing in a Basic Channel record, you know? You hear the same thing in a Theo Parrish record, a never-ending groove. You know, it's it has a much longer history.
I totally agree, because I heard that same thing as a kid. My dad was from St. Thomas, and when I heard Calypso music, I heard... It's the same beat. It was the same trance I was hearing as a kid, so it's always been there. So I think it's a beautiful thing, and it's time for that change where people can, you know, cross over and mix up things, and it's just good.
Hey, let's play him a song.
Let's do it.
What song shall we choose?
Do you have Love and War?
Yes, I do.
I always say that because I think right now, with what's going on from where we're from, it's important to keep that conversation apparent.
Let's talk about how, you know, you come from, you know, you're playing with George Clinton and the crew on the road. How big was the band?
Probably 18 people. Man, I think It was kind of scary at first because I had no idea of what to play. I was a young musician, and they said, come to Europe, here's a tape of 30-some songs that we play. Learn these songs, we'll rehearse that sound check and have a show. So I had to learn those songs, come to sound check and play. It was bad enough not knowing the songs that well and not being able to rehearse. But I think what was worse than that was the fact that I didn't know the musicians that well, and they didn't trust me. And it's hard. You have to really have a listening to play with other people. When it's that many people, you have to know when to stop, when to play, what tones work in the music that can, you know, be heard, what tones don't work that are like too much. Like, you know how strings are when you put strings in a song. If you have some strings that way up here, everybody's like, you know, stop. It's like crazy. So all those things were prevalent to make me understand how to learn how to play with all these musicians. It's like if you were DJing with a band, and you just had to be creative enough to pull samples within that band to make it interesting. You know that some records just won't work.
It's all about, it's kind of hard to explain if you've never experienced it, but it's like when you play live on stage, like things that never happened in your brain will happen as well. It's much different than like you practicing even just in a group of people practicing together in a room. It's going to be different when there's an audience there. There's going to be so much more in your head, or like you have to go to a different part of yourself, but it's like how to fit these sounds. I can see what you're saying, because it's like you could play a tone and it's being covered by the other musicians.
Right.
You know, and you're up there with these guys. I'm sure a number of them have been playing for 10 years or more with this group.
Exactly.
So were there people in the group at that time that had played with James Brown?
Yes, there was Maceo, actually. Maceo Parker was in that band, the saxophonist. And he was the main person who had played with James Brown. And he was the band leader, so he was the one to yell at you to tell you to either stop playing or...
Was there like a way, like how did they communicate that on stage? Did he like have a special kind of nod or something?
He was the sound director. I mean, he was the MD, the musical director at the time. So once you fucked up, he would look at you with this real ugly face, and either, you know, you kind of stop playing or, you know, or play something different.
Because I always heard that James Brown was like the world's most evil musical director of all time.
Yeah, I heard that same thing.
So, I mean, it's a good way. That's like a birth by fire.
Yeah, it is, and I think it's brought me a long way, and I learned a lot from it, because out of that, I always thought that from the beginning that it was going to be an education, a schooling, but, you know, I learned a lot about how to arrange a band, how to make things work within a band, business-wise, as far as management, tour management, moving around on a bus, marketing.
After Parliament, what were your next? You mentioned the brand new heavies. What other musical stuff did you do, like in the post-Parliament days?
I did a Seal album. I did a Maxwell album. The thing that I was always keen on as an artist was to leave my ego at home. I left the ego at home. So whenever I was out on the street, as in the sense of Maxwell, I was walking on the street and these kids said, "Yo, man, we saw you at the Parliament show last night. You and Fiddler?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "You know, damn, we know you know you probably don't want to do it, man, but we'd like you to play on our demo from this artist." So I said, "Give me your number, call me tomorrow at this hotel, and I may come over if I have time." They called me, I came over. I played on the Maxwell demo. There was no money. I just did it because they seemed like some cool guys, and I didn't really care. I went home. The next year, he called me back and said he wanted me to play on his album. So I think that being that humility and that having that sense of just being there for people and giving is what got me more into getting more. I was given a lot going back then.
That's something that a lot of people don't know, is that you actually have to give to get.
Kenny Dixon Jr. or Moodymann's quite a mythical figure in Detroit, and like Brendan said yesterday, we get the scraps of his records released. But how did your association come about with him? I sort of feel that house is a pretty boring kind of genre the last couple of years, but the stuff you guys have done is pretty interesting. And how did that come about?
That's interesting because he's one of those persons that I was doing sessions for, and my record company kept saying, "Man, do you know this bloke, Moodymann?" And I kept saying, "No, I don't know him, but I've been doing some sessions with some cool cats that make house music lately." And a week later, he gave me his record, and I said, "Oh shit, this is Moodymann." I've been working with him all this time and didn't know it. So that's how our relationship started.
But it's also important to show, like, just think about that story. That's how low-key that gentleman is. You know, it's like he was working with him, and he had to get his record to know that he was Moodymann even.
Exactly. And I just work and I do things, and I think a lot of us in Detroit do things for each other in a way that we give a lot to each other without a lot of expectations, and there's not a lot of ego involved, because we can all have that from our experiences and our positive things that have happened to us in our careers, create that, you know, this shit thing, and we don't have that. A lot of us, some of us do, but the majority of us do, anyway, who I'm involved with, do not have that, and it enables us to give to each other. Like, actually, I'm helping Monica with the project, and we barter in a sense that she's helping me with my website, and I help her produce her artists that she's doing, or, you know, give whatever she needs to create her project. Done the same thing, as you know, with Carl Craig and with other producers like Kevin Sanderson as well, and Eddie Folks. And I think that it's a basic setup with keyboards and drum machines, you know, and a lot of times there's a track already done, and they need something to fill up that space to create the mood that they want. Now, it wasn't easy for me at first because I had to go back and listen to so many different genres of music on the dance floor to understand what may be needed as far as the color. Because I could add something that could be totally too dark, or I could add something that could be totally too bright as far as tonality in a record. And it's important that I had to learn different things rhythmically. Some things need chords that lay down, some things need chords that are rhythmic, and some songs need bass lines. I had to learn how to think less about playing and think more about adding to the track something that it needed, as opposed to something that I wanted to play because it felt good and I'm a musician and I like to play. So it made me think economical in a way that I had to go back and listen to all of this music. And a lot of music that I'm listening to is tracks that people like you probably make who are not proficient or are proficient. And there's a lot of things that are done in a simple way, but that are just so sweet, that work together when it's all put together in a puzzle.
Talk about working with Slum Village a little bit more. I love that.
Jay Dee was the kid that created all the tracks, and he came in and played them for me, and he had created them with cassette players. And he just kept dubbing from one cassette to another until he got the track done. And I said, damn, well, if you could do that, then I could show you how to use this MP and show you that you can take those same samples and sample them and make a track. So I watched him as I showed him how to use the machine. After hearing the same tracks, he took the same pieces that he had put together and put them in the MPC and collaged them into the same track. You mean, just to see the look on his face was amazing. He was just so excited by hearing them in the way that he had always wanted to hear them. It was just exciting to see that. And then I had an 8-track tape player at the time, so after we put the music to the tape, they did all the vocals, and it was just sweet. It was amazing to just see the cats fulfill their dreams as far as having a demo done, because they had the tracks, but they didn't have the facility to put the vocals to see what they were going to sound like. And I think that the big part of making records is to be able to have that ability to have the freedom to create different vocal, nuances, and see what your voice sounds like, and know that you can talk, or you can just create the character that you want.
Yep. I mean, it goes to show too how in Detroit, he's talking about Jay Dee making beats with 2 cassette tapes or 2 cassette machines. It's I know plenty of people in Detroit that learned how to mix with like 1 turntable you couldn't change the pitch on and a cassette player that you could change the pitch on. It's people who, it's like a town full of people that won't take no for an answer.
Exactly.
There's no way, you can make music in any way possible.
Yeah, I mean, he took cassette players and learned how to beat tape, make his beats from
beats
cassettes.
Are so,
it's just crazy.
It's like the next level is like.
He's got the title track on the album, and actually, the interesting part about this song is that I introduced him to Q-Tip and made the introduction so that Slum Village could get on and that he could get his production available.
Hey, Crick, could you come here 1 second?
After he got successful and produced so many records.
Which song?
It's
song 13?
12 or 13, Waltz of a Ghetto Fly, the title track.